Hello, welcome to Black Horizons. The month of April 1982 is Black History Month in Nova Scotia. As part of Black History Month, the Black United Front of Nova Scotia will be sponsoring a number of youth activities such as a public speaking contest, essay writing contest, Black Youth Parliament, and Black Interaction 1982, a gathering of some 100 youth from across the province to interact with each other and to learn about their communities. David Woods is the cultural coordinator of the Black United Front, and for the past 3 months, he has been talking to a number of organizations and individuals to get feedback to aid him in the design of a Black cultural awareness program. In today's program, we'll talk to David about Black culture in Nova Scotia, the level of Black cultural awareness, the need for a cultural awareness program, and some of the activities planned for 1982. David, welcome to the Black Horizons program. In the preparation of your proposal for the Black Cultural Awareness Program, you made a fairly close examination, I understand, of Black culture in general in Nova Scotia. Could you perhaps give us an overview of your findings?
Of course, one of the points that we have to say at the onset is that Black people in Nova Scotia come from a variety of backgrounds. We have blacks from Africa, we have blacks who have a strong West Indian heritage, like a lot of the blacks who live in Cape Breton. We also have a lot of blacks with an American sort of background. So we have a cultural diversity within the black population. In looking at Black culture, we find that the culture, to a large extent, that Black people take part in is not different in a lot of respects than the Anglo-Saxon culture, the culture of everyone else. But there are significant differences. Black culture is a rich and dynamic force. We find its expression in a number of different areas. For example, Black music has been a very strong cultural thing among blacks. Dance. We also find that in the Black culture there's a high valuing of sports. We have a notable involvement in sports, especially things like boxing and basketball and different things like that. There's a high presence of Black dialect. There's a variety of other things too, like the religious style of the Black churches, for example, stresses highly on the audience participation. So there's a whole variety of things that make Black culture, and it's a very rich, dynamic sort of thing in Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm. So, although there are many things that are similar to the culture of the larger community, there are these definite elements that are unique in the Black community.
That's right. And also when we look at groups like the West Indians who live in Nova Scotia, we also find other cultural differences, like in the dialect that they speak and things like the different kinds of foods that they eat and also dress. So there is a rich diversity among the different Black peoples in Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, given what you've just said, what is your assessment of the degree to which blacks are aware of their cultural background and history, generally speaking?
Yeah. Well, in order to answer that question, we have to recognize where do blacks learn about their own background. By far, the institution that we all as people depend on to learn history and culture and all that is the school system, the media, newspapers, etc. And when we look at, for example, the curriculum in the textbooks in the school system, from primary right up until grade 12, what we find is that there's not very much written on Black culture in those textbooks. In terms of the media, the things that we find out about Black people most of the time we find out things like political events or where there's riots or events like that, but very little on the background of Black people. We have strong links to Africa because that's where our forefathers came from. We have strong links to the West Indies. We have strong links to the United States. But we don't find that sort of cultural thing being promoted in the school system or in the media. And so that the things that we depend on, like TV and the school system, does not give us a great sense of where we're coming from and different things that, that are of interest to us in knowing about ourselves. So as a result, we find that a lot of blacks are not aware of a lot of the contributions that blacks have made to our society. For example, last week, I was over at Bell Park School in East Preston, and I had done some research on different things that blacks have contributed to both Nova Scotia and the world in general. And after I'd read a list of different inventions that black people had created, one of the students at that school in grade 3 put up a hand and said, "At least now I know that I'm just as good as white people." Now the point of that being is that from a lot of the things that she had heard about black people were either negative or, there wasn't that much. So she didn't feel that blacks had made any sort of contribution. So for her, it was really a rewarding sort of experience to hear the different things that blacks had given to the world. So what I'm saying is that we don't have a lot of it written in school. We don't find out about our African past, and we don't find out about contributions that blacks have made. And we don't get a lot of it from the media. And so the level of awareness by a number of black people is very low of who they are and their own history and culture. And I think we have to do a lot of work in improving that, because it helps to strengthen you individually to know your history and your heritage.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, given what you've just said regarding the level of awareness, how, in your opinion, do you think this could be changed by a cultural awareness program?
Well, a cultural awareness program will at least address the issues. I think a cultural awareness program will encourage blacks to be more involved in the learning of their culture, in the development of their own culture, by implementing a number of activities in which they will be brought in contact with more knowledge of their culture and history. It can also be beneficial in other ways, like in providing resource people, publications, etc., for the larger community, so that the awareness of black contribution is not only known to blacks themselves, but also to the wider community. So I think primarily through organizing activities whereby blacks can be involved in learning about their culture, the cultural awareness program can do a lot to stimulate this awareness and to get blacks to have a greater sense of who they are and a greater sense of pride in themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, now, I understand that one of the things that you did in developing the proposal was have extensive consultations with a number of organizations mm-hmm. and a number of individuals. Why did you feel that was necessary, and what was the result of your consultations with the various organizations and individuals?
Yeah, I contacted quite a few organizations, Multicultural Association of Nova Scotia, the Canadian Council of Christians and Jews, the Black Cultural Society, different organizations like that. My main interest in them is that they have developed over the years experience in dealing in cultural things. It hasn't always been directed towards the black community, but has been, they've been involved in activities designed to stimulate culture, whether it be Canadian culture or whatever. So I felt that because of their skill in these different things, they'd be able to give me some advice on different things, approaches, different things that they have been using that have been successful. Like, for example, from the Canadian Council of Christians and Jews, I was able to take part in a workshop in learning how to organize a cultural awareness workshop. And other groups have been able to provide me with resource material, like the International Education Center at St. Mary's has been able to provide me with a lot of resource material on black culture and history, artifacts, etc., to use in my program. Some of these groups have also been able to give me advice on activities, on what the feasibility of certain activities and what sort of approach I can use for them. So it's been very, very rewarding. And hopefully, if our project remains to be continues to get funding, that we can hook in a lot of our activities in conjunction with some of these other organizations too.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, the proposal that you developed, I understand, looks at a 10-year period and sets various very broad objectives to be accomplished over that period. Could you tell us a bit about what you would like to see happen over the next 10 years?
Yeah. All right. First, again, I'll say that the reason why I put it over a 10-year period is that I wanted to have a sort of a long-range development goal rather than just doing something for a year, but relate a whole series of events towards a certain objective. I sort of figured at the point that in developing the proposal, if we're at point A now, where would we like to be down the road in a 10-year period? So I developed a whole range of activities. The objectives, I would say, in a lot of the activities is first to make blacks, make blacks more aware of their own culture and history. I think that's very important, especially in Nova Scotia, where often what you hear about blacks is often negative. And so that blacks don't have a great sense of don't get a great sense of appreciation from the larger society. And I think unless they feel a great sense of their own identity, that they're vulnerable to a lot of negative things that go on in the society. So to increase the awareness of blacks to their own culture and history, I think also to increase their involvement in the development of it. And we have, for example, we've had very few creative writers, for example, come out of Black Nova Scotia. We've had very few formal presentations of our culture. Like, it exists, but it hasn't been developed in a number of areas like theater, drama, dance, and stuff like that. So I feel that if we can provide activities that would get blacks learning and involving themselves in their culture, that there can be some formal development of it. There will also, hopefully, that we can also increase our cross-cultural involvement with black culture, the different aspects of black culture, different roots of it, like the African, the West Indian. It's my hope that after a while the blacks begin to see themselves in a wider perspective of where black culture is coming from, because we all came from the same sort of background and there's different strains. So also that, and also to improve the image of the black man in Nova Scotia also is one of the objectives of this program, so that when we go to school, that we will have things that are being taught to us that in a positive light, that when we read the papers, that there are more things, because we realize that we're a minority group in Nova Scotia. There's about 15 to 20,000 blacks, and we're not a priority for things like the newspaper or the education system, but we have made an outstanding contribution to black Canadian life and Nova Scotian life. And so hopefully these activities, by getting blacks more and more involved in their culture, will also bring it to the larger attention of the outside society and show them some of the contributions and make them more willing to include our contribution in the mainstream institutions.
Well, before I start talking to you in terms of some of the specific kinds of things that you'd like to do in the next year or so, we talked at the beginning of the program about black culture in a general sense in Nova Scotia. In terms of the social economic experiences that blacks in this province, particularly those blacks who've been here for a number of years, have gone through, the tremendous amount of discrimination, racism, oppression, and so on, how has this impacted on the culture in a general sense in Nova Scotia, in your opinion?
Well, it has hurt it in a number of ways. If you look at the larger part of the black history in Nova Scotia has been caught up in just trying to survive. When we first arrived in Nova Scotia in the 1700s, we were given, poor lands in which to farm on. We couldn't get jobs in certain areas, and, poverty was rampant. So that the basic thing has always been trying to survive. And that has, in a way, stifled our development in a lot of, cultural areas, that we didn't, develop a middle class and a educated elite, because education was something that was denied to us. So that we find in a lot of cultural areas we don't have a high degree of development, which relates a lot to the fact that most people had to work very hard to survive. It has also contributed to a sort of, we've developed certain cultural forms, like our churches, for example, came out of that experience where they, within the community, they became more than just a church. They became a sort of a cultural center, because we found that we couldn't participate in the normal cultural things because either black culture was not being recognized in them or that we weren't accepted within them. So that we turned within to our own church, for example, to make it more than just a church, became a cultural center. And that's another way in which that sort of deprivation has affected, our cultural development. It is also the racism and the prejudice that has existed has also made us not appreciate our culture, because especially in the past, we've always been told that, all right, blacks came as slaves to North America, and when they lived in Africa, they were nothing more than, jungle people running around, and, so that we weren't told about the African kingdoms that existed. We weren't told about the facts that, like during slavery, we had black inventors, we had black politicians, we had black lawyers, but all we ever were told was about the negative things. So that blacks weren't, their culture, they were not made to feel that their culture was anything strong or that it was appreciated. Also the fact that since they weren't getting any information about their culture, it meant that they didn't have an opportunity to learn a lot of these things through, when they went to school or when they talked to anyone else. So in a lot of ways, the fact that we haven't developed culturally as much as we could have, as perhaps you can see in some other black societies, has a lot to do with the fact that, our opportunities for us to be involved in our culture have been denied to us in the past. And so now that, the society has changed, hopefully we can rectify that by doing programs such as a cultural awareness program.
Well, now, I was interested in talking to you earlier about your approach to this. You were suggesting that there were 3 phases that you saw as being necessary. Could you tell us something about those phases?
In examining the whole thing, I realized, all right, if we say that blacks generally have a low level of cultural awareness and historical awareness to their heritage, that's not something you can change in a year or 2 years, or not something that you can say, well, in this year a lot of blacks are not aware of their history, and by next year they'll all be aware of their history. It's a long growth process. And I think the best way of achieving something through a growth process is by directing it in certain phases. Now, I divided up my approach plan into 3 phases, one being, the first phase being the initiation phase, with the emphasis in that phase being in information sharing, getting discussions started on black culture and history, exposing blacks more to their own culture in a more positive sense. The second phase would be the entrenchment phase, where a number of activities started in the initiation phase begin to take form and become regular features, regular activities in the black community. And that way, not only have blacks have began hearing more about their own culture, but they've also began taking part in developing their culture in a continual sort of manner. The later phase I call the sort of manipulative phase, in which we can direct the use of our culture into specific needs that we have in our community. If, for example, we feel that our culture is dying in certain aspects, and we feel that only through directing our energies into developing it, and within in that phase we can emphasize developing culture and directing it to certain goals, addressing certain problems in the community, and using our culture to improve our situation.
Well, I'd like to turn you now in the 10 or so minutes that we have left to a discussion of some of the specific kinds of things that you've suggested, both in terms of the next year and over the years as we begin to move into the program that you've designed. Could you tell us about some of the main things that you'll be doing in the next year or so?
Now, the main, the core of the whole awareness program and the thing that will hopefully make it successful is starting community organizations. Because I believe that you can do a number of things, you can offer a number of things, but unless you have a base through which you can channel it properly, you might find that you're doing a lot of things, and you put on an event and it's nice, but after that there's nothing that sort of reinforces it, and no continuity. So my main emphasis over the next year will be in forming community groups. We've been lucky so far in that we've had 2 groups, youth groups, that have been functioning in the Halifax, Dartmouth area, one at St. Pat's High School and one at Dartmouth High School. And they now have been able to incorporate a lot of the cultural awareness activities. We have a group in Sydney that just formed, and we just started a group in the Sackville area. So over the next year, and with the metro being the focus area for the first year, we'll attempt to get community groups started in each one of these communities. These groups will meet, they will discuss issues, they will talk about things they'd like to see done, and then hopefully from when we find out the kind of things they need, we will then be able to develop activities to suit them.
These groups, will they be primarily youth groups, or will they be general community groups, or a combination?
Well, we started off with youth groups because, of course, youth. We find that young people have more time for us to begin. They're more receptive, and so we'll start there. But not only youth groups. We want this to be covering the whole community, all ages, and even if we don't have older people involved in some of the groups, the activities themselves will be designed for everyone in the community.
Yes.
From these groups, we will develop activities which they can do together. For example, Dartmouth High now is working on putting on a play in the fall of next year. St. Pat's now is organizing an exchange trip to a black community in Ontario. So different activities like that. And hopefully from there we'll get most of our ideas for things that we can do. Another major concept in the cultural awareness program is what I call the concept of a community fest. We have some 30-something black communities scattered all over the province, each one of them with a very unique and rich history and background. The idea of Community Fest will be bringing all these communities together once a year at a location where each community gives a presentation of itself in different categories. We will, for example, ask them to make a dramatic presentation on on the lifestyle of the community. We'll ask them to make a visual presentation, whether it be photography or drawings or whatever. We'll also ask them to make a presentation in song and other categories like that. There's still a lot of details to be worked out. But hopefully by communities thinking about their communities and looking at it in a positive way and having to come up with a presentation on their communities and these different things, that we can have a gathering every year at some location where black people can go and see their history, can be involved in their culture, and can feel a great sense of pride from seeing all people from all over the province coming together presenting themselves. And we'll offer prizes for this, and it'll stimulate an interest in black culture and a greater sense of pride in the different communities. There will be other things involved in the cultural awareness program. We will offer to the schools, community groups, anyone who's interested, speaker series, which is where we can have the staff at the Black United Front or resource people in the black community who will go around to different schools or community groups and give talks on black culture and history. Like over the last 3 weeks, I've had about 3 speaking engagements at different schools. And that gives us contact because there isn't that much discussion right now, and I think so the program will offer that to school and community groups. They'll have people who have done research, who are versed in talking on black culture, going out and giving talks on these different things. We'll also offer publications. It is my hope, for example, to start a series of black arts contests, and in writing, poetry, short story, photography, art, different things like that. Because right now we don't have a body of work that we can go to in Nova Scotia that talks about our experiences. When we want to read literature on black lifestyle, most of it comes from the United States. When we want to look at art, there's no place that we can go to find these things. There's no collection of black photography, and it's not very highly represented in museums and schools. So hopefully by starting these art contests, we can stimulate blacks who are interested in these things to produce work that reflect the black lifestyle, the black history, the black heritage. And as the Black United Front can collect all these things and put out publications on black poetry in Nova Scotia, or collect black art in Nova Scotia, which will be important now that we have approval for building the cultural museum. We'll have works to put in there, and different things like that. So that will be another aspect of the whole program. We will do other things like organizing cultural awareness workshops. In fact, the first workshop for the program will be held this weekend at Dartmouth High, and we've invited students from all over the metro area to attend this. And at these cultural workshops, blacks will have a chance to talk about their culture, to be involved in it, to develop a greater understanding of that culture, and to stimulate their imaginations and stuff like that. So that's some of the things that we'll be doing. Other things, we'll have special programs designed for Black Horizons and the radio show. We will do publications in local newspapers that talk on black culture, so that there's an ongoing discussion, an ongoing exposure to black culture for both blacks and the larger community.
I might add that by the time this program is aired, the workshop that you referred to would have been held yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
But just in the closing minutes of today's program, I'm particularly interested in your work with the young people. And we were talking earlier, and there's a whole range, I guess, of some 20 suggested kinds of areas of involvement that the youngsters could get involved in. I wonder if perhaps you could just very quickly give us some idea of the kinds of things that you're going to be encouraging the young people in the student associations to involve themselves in.
Right. Yeah, so what I devised was a whole series of projects, which when we start youth groups and community groups, we're going to suggest that they look at undertaking. Among some of these projects, one, for example, is doing a play, an original play that interprets your community. That's one of the projects. Another one is organizing an exchange trip to a black community, either within the province or to another province. The Department of Secretary of the State has a special program that helps with this. Other things include organizing a youth conference within your school, or cultural awareness sort of conference. We have other ideas, for example, like organizing a Reach for the Top competition among the different youth groups, so that when they form, they have a sort of competition to see which one knows more about black culture and history. Other things are like doing some research on your own community, for example, collecting examples of different black dialect and finding out the origins for your own community. Other things include doing a black cultural display in your high school or whatever school or in the community, so that people can share with you. So there's a whole range of different projects that we suggest that they undertake, and hopefully the more they do, the better they feel about themselves. And there's also, I think, the crucial thing is that within their schools, within their communities, the whites also have a chance to see a positive sharing between both cultures, because as it is now, there's usually not anything, any sort of formal positive sharing. It's just like, whites know blacks, and they know certain things about them, but they don't know other things about them. And I think through these sort of projects, there'll be a chance for both groups to learn a lot more about each other.
Well, David, I want to thank you for being our guest today. It sounds as though you've given a tremendous amount of thought to the development of this program. I want to wish you all the best in its implementation, and look forward perhaps to having you back maybe sometime in the future to talk about the success that you're having with the program. We want to thank you for being our guest today on the Black Horizons program. Join us next week, won't you? Hello, welcome to Black Horizons. We're glad that you could come back to join us for another program. Some of our viewers may recall that approximately 3 months ago we had Frank Boyd of the Black United Front staff on our program to talk about a program that was being launched in various black communities across the province. In today's program, we're going to be talking to the buff workers who have been working in the 5 selected black communities to assist these communities with a needs assessment and subsequent development of community development programs. We'll talk to them about the success that they've been achieving in their various areas. I want to, first of all, turn to Mary Jordan, who is working in the Glace Bay area communities. Many of our viewers may not know, Mary, that we have black communities scattered all across the province from Yarmouth, and in fact we'll be talking to the worker in the Yarmouth area a little later in today's program. But we have black communities scattered all the way from Yarmouth through to Glace Bay. Glace Bay, I think, is one black community that many of our viewers, particularly in the Halifax Dartmouth area, may not be too knowledgeable about. What kind of success have you been having with in the Glace Bay community, with the black community there, Mary?
Well, we revitalized the UNIA, and we reestablished the Founders Day of the UNIA. We also obtained a detailed planning for our area, and we also established some funds to start a little project in recreation, as our Sterling Playground needed to be fixed up. We have our committees formed, we have steering committee, and we do have our subcommittees established at this time.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're a resident of Glace Bay, aren't you? A lifetime resident of Glace Bay, aren't you, Mary?
Yes, I am.
Right, so you're working in your hometown, so to
Yes.
speak. Well, now, you made mention of the UNIA. Many people may not be familiar. What does UNIA stand for?
It means Universal Negro Improvement Association.
Mm-hmm.
It's a black organization. Its memberships is open only to black people.
Mm-hmm. This would be the group that was established by Marcus Garvey, is it not?
Right. It was formed in Glace Bay in 1923.
Yeah, that's quite significant, to have an organization. Most people, when they think about black organizations, like the Black United Front, for example, or some of our recent organizations, don't have any knowledge of the fact that we've had organizations like this established as long back as, well, you say 1923 when the UNIA. Do you know, was Marcus Garvey ever actually in Glace Bay?
Yes.
He actually came there and established this organization.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, you said it's been revitalized. It hasn't been active of late, or what was involved in that?
It wasn't active for the last 7 years. Leadership seemed to be a problem at the time.
Mm-hmm. And how have you been successful in getting the group reactivated? What's gone into that?
Well, first we had a lot of community contact, personal contacts myself, and the need was to get the organization formed and get it active again. And a few of us started out, and we've got it activated again, and we formed like a ladies' auxiliary, and everything seems to be going so successful right now.
Right. Well, now, Glace Bay hasn't been an area that, to the best of my knowledge, that the Black United Front has been that active in the past. What's the community's perception of the Black United Front these days?
It's becoming more positive as I'm working with each member in the community, and we sit down, we have discussions, and we have community meetings and that, and now they're becoming more aware of the need for the Black United Front and the different other organizations that, to work together.
Mm-hmm. Now, you made mention of the work with the various committees. What committees do you have, and what are these committees? What's behind the establishment of these various committees?
Well, we found out after having a few meetings that there was some problems in our area, such as housing, education, there was traffic, employment. So we formed subcommittees in each of these problem areas so that we could take our findings back and see could we find solutions to them.
Mm-hmm. So then I guess there would be quite a bit of community participation. Do you have same members on these committees, or are there different membership on each of the committees?
Oh, it's different membership on each committee.
I see. Well, now, you talked as well about the detailed planning for the area. What's involved in that? Could you explain a little bit about that? I guess you had to meet with government officials and so on?
Yes, we did. First I went in and I was talking to the director of the Metro Planning Commission, and he explained to us that, we could have a detailed planning, but we'd have to have approval from our municipal councilors. So then I went and I talked to the mayor of Glace Bay, and he seemed to have a positive effect, to my questioning of that, and he's formed a meeting with the advisory committee.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to them, and they said that there seemed to be no problem, that, it was a positive effect, and that they were proud to have a small community take the first step, and that, they were even prouder that it was a black community, and that the rest of the communities should follow what we're doing.
So you're sort of setting the lead in the
Yes,
Glace
an
Bay,
example,
Glace
yes.
Bay area, right?
Mhm.
Well, Mary, I want to pass over, if I can, for a minute to Beverly McFadden. Beverly, you're working in the 3 Mile Plains, 3 Mile Plains Newport Station, I guess would be the proper description of the area that you're working in. How are things going there in the 3 Mile Plains Newport area?
They're going quite well. I think different from Mary, though, is the fact that I'm not a resident of the area and have had to familiarize myself with the entire community. So it's made it a little bit slow starting because I've started from a different base. But I have to say that my reception within the communities has been very good, and I feel pretty positive about the way things are going.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you established your committees and so on in the area
We
yet?
have an operational steering committee, and we also have an employment committee, subcommittee, that is, and employment seems to be the primary area of concern for the residents, and that's the area that we're mainly spending a lot of time with right now. But we are still hoping to establish more subcommittees.
Mm-hmm. So you're working, it's ongoing, you're working to get your committees in place. What are your hopes for the future of the program in the 3 Mile Plains area? Have the people been basically receptive to the program? What do
Yeah,
you
I'd
feel?
have to say that they have been receptive to the program. Also, I'd say that I think the future looks pretty good. They're coming along different, different things interest different people. And as we touch an area that someone is concerned in, then of course they lend their support. So it's an ongoing process. But as I said, I'm positive about the results.
Right. Well, we didn't have much of a chance when we were talking to Mary to get her profile of the community. We talked quite a bit about what she's doing there, but perhaps we could take a few minutes and you could just tell us a bit about the Windsor Plains Newport community. Where it is and how many people are there and what kind of organizational base is there and so on. Could you give us a little bit of a synopsis?
One of the difficulties first is that the 3 Mile Plains and the Newport Station communities are it's an unincorporated area. They're divided, and 3 Mile Plains has the benefit of a lot of the municipal services and so on, while Newport Station and the particular area I'm dealing with there doesn't receive municipal services. So we have a small almost area of difficulty to start with, in that one area seems to receive more than another area, but that's because of their locale and of course the zoning and so on. So we're dealing with that initially, and we've tried to explain some of the reasons for the seeming lack of response to the needs of people in one area as opposed to the people in another. The profile generally is that it's a rural community. Both communities are rural, just some 7 kilometers just outside of Windsor. 3 Mile Plains and Newport Station are very close to each other. The Green Street, Punnock Road, and the Connector Highway are the areas that I'm mainly concerned with. They're very close to each other, but as I said, there are differences in the way the communities are set up, simply because of the zoning and the lay of the land and so on.
Right. Well, that would be an interesting area in terms of how the communities are going to be able to reconcile this really fractionalization that's come about as a result of the geographical locations of the areas.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you best of luck when you work in Windsor. James Francois, you're the worker for the Halifax County area and been working particularly in the Prestons. You're in a little bit of a different situation than the rest of the staff in the sense that you've more or less been through the needs assessment part of the program. You actually have a plan that's intact. It's been approved by the municipality of the County of Halifax and the province of Nova Scotia. Tell us a bit about what's going on in your area of involvement in the Prestons.
Well, like you said, my situation is somewhat different in that we have gone through the process of planning, and we are now at the level of implementation. As one would recall, I'm sure people around Halifax, Dartmouth would recall the fact that the process in the Preston area took quite some time and was a result of a number of factors, which at the moment seems to have come together and sort of shape some sort of direction for the communities in the future. And perhaps I should indicate the communities I'm referring to here right now are North Preston, East Preston, and Cherrybrook, Lake Loon area. Also included in this particular plan is the Lake Major area. In the black communities, we are primarily concerned with the development of an economic base within the community to deal with such issues as employment, which is a major problem in that area. There is the matter of the extension or expansion of the North Preston community especially. There's a need for that community to grow. And the only way we can see it developing is through the moving outwards towards the East Preston area, and that is what brought us into focus the project which we have on the board now as the land assembly in that area. And we hope that that portion of land, which those of you who know the area quite well, between North Preston and East Preston would be able to be utilized to form a base for the growth and development of those two communities. So those are some of the kinds of things. Of course, there is the matter of roads, development of roads, and other issues which are pertinent to the growth and continued development of the communities. But these are also being addressed as time goes on, and as time permits us, we'll deal with those issues.
Well, James, this Preston area, or the Lake Major plan area, has developed quite a sophisticated plan. I guess it's the first plan that's been approved was one of the first plans to be approved in the county of Halifax. How has the community organized itself to oversee the implementation of this plan?
Well, first of all, the development of the community plan came about because of the grouping together of the three communities. This was initially a difficult process, but this was achieved. And the four communities came together and formed what is now known as the Joint Action, Lake Major Joint Action Watershed Committee. We have lately dropped the word Lake Major, and we just refer it to the Joint Action Committee. So that we are talking about the four communities working like that, and there are two representatives from each community which forms this Joint Action Committee. In addition to that, we have at the present 2 staff members working, one as a community worker and myself as a special project worker with the Joint Action Committee. So that's the kind of mechanism which we have in place for discussion and for making of decision relating to the community.
So it's a representative community structure.
Definitely.
Now, I understand that you have worked along with Althea Tolliver, who is your co-worker in the area, and you've evolved or in the process of preparing a book outlining the Preston experience. From your work on that particular book, could you summarize, in your opinion, what were the main factors which led to the success of the plan in the area that you're working in? Could you identify some of the factors?
Well, I think some of the factors which led to the successful conclusion of the plan was the fact that, first of all, the communities themselves were able to identify their own problems. And not only were they able to do this, they were able to suggest certain solutions to those problems. In addition to that, they were able to gain the respect, the mutual respect of the government bureaucracy, so to speak, that they had to work with, because there were a lot of government involvement in this plan as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was the City of Dartmouth, there was the Municipal Department, and departments like that, the Department of Environment and this sort of thing. So the community leaders were able to gain the respect of these personnel from the government department. And this went a long way in ensuring that the wishes of the communities were observed and were maintained. I must admit here that the chairman of the working committee, which was another committee comprised of the members of the government departments and the community joint action committee, Mr. Morris Lloyd, I think a tremendous amount of appreciation must go to him in terms of his impartiality in ensuring that the conflict which was apparent in the beginning between the the wishes of the community and those of the government agencies which were trying to protect the watershed area. He did quite a bit in making sure that the wishes of the community were always understood, and I think it's really encouraging to have worked with him, and a lot of appreciation should be given to him for his the very skillful way in which he handled the meetings and discussions.
We're back, and there's another area of the province that we don't hear very much about, and we want to spend some time chatting with Joanne States, who's the buff worker in the Amherst community. Joanne, tell us what's happening in the community of Amherst. Perhaps first of all, you give us a little bit of a profile of the black community there in Amherst.
Well, the black community in Amherst has been divided for a period of time in working together with one another. Now, though, we have been looking at ideas where the community can bring themselves back together again. A lot of the area that will be concentrated on will be social gathering, and it is hoped that through that the community at least will begin talking about the problems in their area.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen in the months that you've been working in the area, have you seen any coming together of the community around this whole question of needs and so on?
Well, yes, we've held a few meetings there, and a lot of the people came out to attend at various points. We have not formed our committee yet there, but we have a list of nominees who are willing to get started as soon as the committee is formed. The fact, I think, that I don't come from the area myself makes a difference and makes the process a bit slower.
How have you been able to overcome that?
Well, I was very well received in the area. The name of Buff did not scare off a lot of people. They were familiar with it. As you know, Amherst has a field worker for the Black United Front, Teresa Halfkenny.
You mean the counselor, provincial counselor?
Yes, I'm
Right.
sorry. And she does work a lot with the young people there. They have been involved in other Buff activities, such as the Youth Parliament. And last year, Amherst was the site of the Black Interaction. Mm-hmm. And this year, they're being involved in it again.
So would it be fair to say that you feel that the community's involvement with Buff in the past has facilitated your work with the community there? They have a history of working with Buff?
Yes, they have for several years.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, we've talked about the Glace Bay black communities, which takes us off to the extreme east of Nova Scotia. I'd like to go now to the other end of the province. That's the Yarmouth, Greenville series of communities. Ada Fells, you're the worker in these two communities. Your situation, again, is a little bit different than the others in the sense that you're working with two black communities that are fairly close together but are yet distinct communities. How has work been going with the program in your area?
Well, we've been able to form a committee with people from both areas, Greenville and Yarmouth. And from that committee, we formed a subcommittee who will be in charge of the different needs in the area. And I think that is going quite well.
Mm-hmm. What do you call your committee? Do you have a name for your committee?
Greenville and Yarmouth Joint Action Committee.
Right. Well, now, the one of the purposes behind your work is to develop a community development plan. Will you be developing two plans in your area? Does the fact that one is in the county of Yarmouth, and I guess it's the county of Yarmouth, is it Greenville would be in?
Yes.
Right. And the Yarmouth town itself, of course, would be in the town. Is this going to present any difficulties in terms of evolving the plan?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Will you divide? Will it be one plan or two plans? Do you?
There'll be 2 plans.
2 plans for the area. What I guess you've had a lot of contact from talking to you before we went on the program today. You were mentioning a lot of contact with the various municipal people there, various councillors and so on. What has their response been to the community's desire to get involved in the program?
They seem willing to work with us. So I think it's just a matter of us getting our plans together. And
Well, now, Yarmouth is an area that has a long history of working with the Black United Front. You've been an active member of the Buff Council for a number of years, and other people from the area, they've been chairman of Buff and so on. I guess this perhaps has been beneficial to you in terms of getting the program mounted?
yes, I think it has.
What about the areas of involvement in Yarmouth to this point by the Black United Front? How is this going to fit in with this latest initiative that you're taking? In terms of, like community, as we said earlier, Buff has been involved in the Yarmouth community for quite some time now. Is there any confusion being caused by Buff's previous involvement, the things that Buff's been involved in previously, in this new program that you're involved in?
No, because the people already knew what Buff was about, and there's always been a really good working relationship with Buff and our community. So I can see that things are going to go really well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Frank, we talked to you a couple of months ago, as I mentioned in the lead into today's program, when you were talking about the concept behind the plan, what it was that you were trying to do and so on. You promised at that time that you would come back and give us a bit of an update. I didn't realize that you were going to provide us with all of these beautiful people to be able to give first-hand account of what's been going on in the area. We've heard from them in terms of the progress that they've achieved in their respective areas. Is the Director of Field Services, the individual who's more or less responsible for coordinating this whole thing. What are your feelings now, 3 months after the program, or several months actually, I guess, after the program's been established? How do you feel about the whole process?
Well, this program is probably one of the most difficult things that I've ever undertaken. And I think that the workers who bear that out, that has been really more than a 9-to-5 job. It's been really a full-time job for everybody. And I've really appreciated the amount of work that they put into it. One thing is becoming increasingly apparent, though, and that is the need for the funding source to increase their funding, especially since there's to a large degree, there's case work that has to be done. And of course, we're in the community to do a specific job, and that is planning for the communities. So one of the difficulties have been in trying to come to grips with the heavy pressures to do things along the social service line and the housing line and so on. And while that's all part of our plan, it's been an enormous strain on our resources. First, in just trying to get the community together and competing with all of these other claims, and justified ones, I might add at that. So I look forward to the possibility of an increase in our funding from our sources, which will enable us to do more in the communities, perhaps to put a few more workers in the field.
So you think that the staff that you have at the moment should be expanded? There should be somebody just to deal with the social service kind of function.
That's correct.
Right.
And then it will leave some of our staff free to do the planning that this program is supposed to deal with.
Right. Well, that must be quite a dilemma because, as you say, on the one hand, you've got these immediate kinds of survival kinds of concerns that are present in all of our black communities, and on the other hand, we're trying to get communities to sort of look at the broader kind of context, so that we don't get so caught up with what we're doing in the present that we sort of neglect to make proper kinds of plans and so on. Have you been surprised at all by the level of participation that seems to be apparent from what all of the workers have said?
No, I'm not, and I'm not surprised either at the difficulties in some areas with getting participation. See, we've had a long history of neglect in our communities. And since the initiation of BUF, we've been doing a great deal to try to overcome those particular kinds of non-participation problems. Now we're getting in an area, and as Mrs. Fells can attest, we're like in Yarmouth, where we've had a long series of contact with that community, almost unbroken. You find there that there's the infrastructure in terms of people and ability to analyze problems and solve them that exist in that community. Makes that community very, very prepared to take advantage of a program like this one. Whereas in other areas, the difficulties exist in getting people together to see that programs can work for their self-interest and for their betterment. So that we're at various stages of this program, and we're well aware that in some places it's going to take a longer time to get communities in the position where they are independent enough, have the foresight enough, and the ability to handle the kinds of problems that confront them in their day-to-day life. So what we're trying to do at the moment is bring those different communities along at their pace. And at the same time, of course, there's a mutual education process which is taking place there, which means that we as workers have to come along and anticipate the new movements in the community, and it requires a great deal of work and a great deal of self-sacrifice and discipline. And I'm pleased to say that the staff has been responding to that very well.
In the minute or so that we have left, what's the most important, the plan that will come at the end of it, or the growth and development that will come to the process?
Well, in terms of the way I see it, we're not physical planners by any way, means, or stretch of the imagination. Really, we're dealing here with people and their potential to meet their own problems, for people to be able to stay within their own communities and find all they need there in order to be able to live orderly and useful lives, such as employment, such as proper education, and the whole range of opportunities which are available to people who have the means, who are in the mainstream of our community. And what we're trying to do here is to bring the people of our communities in the mainstream of Canadian life, and I think that's a worthwhile goal and objective.
Well, I want to thank you and all the members of your staff for coming along and being our guests on the Black Horizons program. I've enjoyed doing it. We've been talking about planning in Nova Scotia's black communities. Thank you for being our guest on today's program. Join us next week, won't you?